And back, please. We have our full seating of commissioners here for this meeting, so we're going to proceed. I'm going to start with asking everybody to silence their cell phones, and if you would join us in the pledge of allegiance.
To the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Sure. Darcy Kaplan? Here. Angela Brown? Here. Jenny Slopes? Here. Keith Gosha?
Here.
Jasper Christopher? Here. Sarah Shields? Here.
I am going to go ahead and read the adopted policy since we do have kind of a full house. I do appreciate you all being here and thrilled to have some community interest and involvement. Adopted policy of the Berlin Township Zoning Commission is that each applicant or agenda item will be given 10 minutes or at the discretion of the chairperson to make a formal presentation. Chair will allow questions from the commission members in order to provide a timely and orderly discussion of business for consideration. Finally, the audience will then be given up to 3 minutes or at the discretion of the chairperson for each person to respond, and the chairperson may limit repetitive debate. All comments from the audience must be addressed to the chairperson. We want to try to keep public comments to 3 minutes tonight. I know some people have lengthy comments. If you have a friend you can share your comments with, that would be great. So please can you verify that this meeting is advertised?
Yes, as a regular meeting in December of 2022 in the Delaware Gazette. And also this was tabled from the last year.
We have minutes before us from our last meeting on November 28th. Do we have a motion for approval of this minutes?
I'll make a motion to approve BZC meeting minutes from November 28th, 2023.
Thank you.
I'll second the motion.
Mr. DeChristopher?
Yes.
Ms. Slopes?
Yes.
Ms. Brown? Yes. Ms. Kaplan?
Yes. All right. We are continuing with this date and time certain on BZC 23-005. And that is filed by John Angelo Burke, J. Angelo Builders, LLC, from 7034 Africa Road in Galena. Applicant is requesting an administrative review for the overlay district, Old Cheshire Clean Unit Development District, and the parcels 418-410-01-069-000 and 418-410-01-070-000, plus or minus 11 acres. These are vacant land situated on the south side of Cheshire Road, east of East Street in the village of Cheshire, for mixed use traditional village blend of all the elements of OCPUD known as the Cheshire Mills. So we have before us the applicant with some amendments from our previous meeting. You want to go ahead and present?
Can I approach?
Yes, sir.
I had a PowerPoint presentation, but it's not working on the screen, so. Make some copies.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Good evening, my name is Brian Hunt. I'm an attorney representing the developer J. Angelo Builders, LLC. And before we jump into the specifics of the application and the amendments that were made and where things are going from here, we just wanted to briefly respond to a couple of fundamental issues that we thought were raised at the last meeting. So I'm going to take just a couple minutes to go over some of those things and hopefully address some of the points that were brought up. I was, like I said, hoping to have a PowerPoint so everybody could see it, but it's basically just text, so I'm really missing a whole lot. The first slide we're looking at is just fundamental zoning principles in Ohio, and it's well established that all zoning decisions should be based upon the principle that zoning resolutions deprive property owners of certain uses of their land that they're otherwise lawfully entitled to use them for, and that they're a derogation of common law. And as such, resolutions are supposed to be construed in favor of property owners And while Ohio political subdivisions can zone or rezone property or regulate the use of land, they may not do so in a capricious, arbitrary, or unreasonable manner. Townships are somewhat unique in Ohio in that they're known as creatures of statute. And so they only possess the authority that's granted to them by the Ohio legislature. So townships have no inherent or constitutional interest or zoning power, and they may only do so through Chapter 519 of the Ohio Revised Code. Section 519.02 states that a township can regulate zoning in its boundaries, but it's required to do so in accordance with the comprehensive plan. Zoning regulations that are not in accordance with the comprehensive plan are typically invalid and could constitute unlawful spot zoning. So comprehensive plans are both necessary and for townships they're required. Courts have said that comprehensive plans serve to prevent piecemeal or unlawful spot zoning, allow persons purchasing property to determine in advance to what use that property can be put, and to prevent zoning laws and regulations from being exercised in arbitrary or unreasonable manners. They've also been called yardsticks for these types of processes. A comprehensive plan is typically just a policy document, it's not law, but it may become a part of the law and relied upon by decision makers when it is incorporated into the code of ordinances. So Berlin Township's comprehensive plan was recently amended, and I think the prior version was 2010, there was a version before that as well. But again, in September 2023, a new version was put into effect. The intention behind this updated comprehensive plan included reviewing recent changes in land use, reviewing recent changes in economic, legislative, judicial, and regulatory conditions, reviewing the various goals and policies of the township, amending those to make sure that they align with the township's future objectives for growth, those types of things. It also states that the comprehensive plan is the policies, goals, and a recommended land use map for future development, and it's intended to be the township's vision for growth and development. In the comprehensive plan, we are located in Planning Area 9, which is the historic village of Cheshire and surrounding areas. And the important part of that section is that it's recommended for redevelopment in the mixed-use plan district, preferably in the downtown with historic architectural syntax, on street angle parking, sidewalks, street trees, and shallow or zero setbacks. And those are certainly the factors that were attempted to be met when we designed this project and submitted it for your review. The zoning resolution does incorporate the comprehensive plan, really in two sections. Section 3.01 states that the zoning boards and the Board of Township Trustees will, when appropriate, refer to all plans, master plan studies, and treatises affecting the township area. Then Article 4 of the Township Zoning Resolution defines the comprehensive plan as, among other things, the goals, objectives, and policies of the community. Within the resolution, and what we're looking at right now is the Old Cheshire Plan Unit Development District, which was adopted June 2004. And I think that's important because several things have happened since that time. I counted this evening that the zoning resolution has undergone 15 revisions since this was enacted, and it's been kept all along. It hasn't been removed, and to my knowledge, it hasn't been changed. As we talked about earlier, the comprehensive plan has also undergone at least 2 revisions since that time. The purpose of this type of district is to provide flexibility in the arrangement, design, and setbacks of land uses, offer alternatives to standard tract development, establish a more efficient use of land, and encourage creativity through a process of review and approval. And under the zoning resolution, if we meet the criteria of Article 18, then this commission should approve our application. As a final thought on the last slide is a quote from Justice Stratton in a recent decision that she issued in a concurring opinion in Buckeye Community Hope Foundation versus the City of Cuyahoga Falls. And Justice Stratton kind of had an interesting childhood. She was born in Thailand and grew up in Southeast Asia. So in this decision, she talks about her observations and experience seeing governments and things that operated in a way that she did not think was the most efficient. So with that in mind, she wrote this: predictability and stability are important to the survival of our system. Homeowners must be secure in the knowledge that their deed to their home will survive the election. Businesses must be able to rely upon the stability of contracts, zoning laws, tax laws, and laws governing relationships, whether their business is to build factories or to operate a beauty salon. The loss of stability can result in chaos. And I think what she's talking about there is that adage that we're a nation of laws. And I know that a lot of people in this room have an interest in this development, they have concerns, but ultimately we are bound by the laws of this township, the zoning resolution, the comprehensive plan, and those should be the documents that guide your decisions. Thank you.
The mistakes notwithstanding that were in my application last time, those were all easily curable. The most frustrating part was to find that everything in my application was what's been done in 3 other subdivisions in this township. And I understand that the community is, more of a 2 to 3 dwelling unit per acre community, and this is a 5 unit per acre community. But we are different, and what I asked for is allowed. But I don't live in a world where I get to do exactly what I want to do. Damn torpedoes for everybody else. Everything I've always done has been to try to get people to come together and come up with something that works for everyone. I'm fond of saying if we're all unhappy, then we probably have a good agreement amongst us. I left here, I was a little upset. Took me a couple days to get back to center. I concentrated on answering the deficiencies that we had. Initially, I wanted to come back and say I want the whole 45 over on the dwellings on the 7 acres. But in reflecting upon that, again, I'm trying to meet what balance works for everyone. In the packet that I submitted, I tried to stay true to what we were originally trying to do. I tried to present those things that we were short on in our explanations, like I didn't have a full understanding of the landscaping because I didn't read it. I find that my landscaper knew more about it than I did when he put that fence in there, because the choice was a mound or a fence. And since we were only going to be 10 feet away and there's existing trees there, it made more sense to put the fence there. I understand a lot of people want trees, back on the 7 acres, and I don't mind putting those trees in, but I don't want it to be at the expense of the existing trees. I also don't want them to be too close together, because I've watched developers do that and half of them die out over the first season. It's curious that we have to plant street trees 40 feet apart, but then everybody wants all their other trees for landscape screening to be 6 feet apart, and that's just too tight. Maybe 40 is too far, but 6 feet is too tight. I turned in my application and I turned in this cover sheet. There were some things that again, I was still chewing on how we handle right-of-ways throughout the township, both at the township level, the county level, what the bike path says. I don't really want to touch too much on that, other than to say, the bike path, the master plan for the bike path says Cheshire is an on-the-road trail. That means there shouldn't be bike paths taken from developers as they develop. Put a bike path on there. You can travel up and down Pyatt's Road. You can travel up and down Glen Parkway, and that bike path is in the right of way. That's exactly where your handbook says it should be. It's where the bike path says they expect it to be. It's where Delaware County Engineering expects it to be. So taking it from me was an issue I was held dear at the last meeting, and kind of upset me that we were arguing over that, or having a disagreement about that. The other thing was to go back and travel some of the other subdivisions and find. I went back through the minutes for some of their meetings, stuff that they had with the engineering department, and found that they had the exact same setbacks or less. The greenery has a 5-foot setback for the rear load garages. I was asking for 10. I don't disagree, and I kept moving the 1 to 20 so that they would have an extra parking space for 2 cars, since they wouldn't have that, the ones that were facing Cheshire. But somebody else was granted even less than what I was asking for initially. They also have some areas where their front porches are only 7.5 feet from the curb. We were wanting to stay at 15 feet in most cases, I believe. While we were being pushed for, I think, 30 or 40 as a setback. Ultimately, after I turned this in, I was left thinking still about what everybody else had said, because it was still resonating within me. And what is the village of Cheshire? What is it? Most people, I think I was told last time that it's not a village. Or if it is a village, if we wanted it to look like Delaware or Dublin or even Galena, then we'd have moved to those places. So I spent a couple of days, usually Tuesdays and Thursdays when they have a pizza buffet, driving around the subdivision and seeing what really goes on in there. And the only thing I could come up with is that it's a collection of red and tan barns. That's what's been built in the last 5 years. Not that there's anything wrong with that, but that's been the choice. I know that when I designed everything, I was concentrating on the shires and trying to complement them with our pavilions and some of the barns type structures that I was trying to incorporate into there. But then I started thinking, is my, I don't want to say massive because I found out it's smaller than this building, but is my building too big or not going to fit in with the character of what's there? Would a series of barns be better on that? And I really just want to address the 4 acres because that's really where I wanted to put the commercial. I still see residentials beyond the 7 acres. But would a series of barns be better? I had a couple different ideas that I'd seen that I thought were attractive. This bottom one's actually a house, but it looks like it could be an office or a showroom or a restaurant, the way it's nice and open. Again, it looks very similar to the barn at the Shires with the cupolas and stuff. And then I thought, how important is it to be close to the road? Would it be better if I was sitting farther back with my parking in front? Both of those options, if I desired my parking to be behind, both of those options are in the comprehensive plan. They talk about people driving down Cheshire as if they might turn in and park. I don't know if that'll ever happen because we don't know the timing of the expansion of the road or what they plan to do. But if I move it back, I don't care about the bike path anymore because it no longer impacts me. I was worried about the bike path being the first thing you see when you're trying to sit out and enjoy a cup of coffee 10 feet away from where that bike path would be. If we're 130 feet away, which is what the NCD setting is, then we don't have that problem with it. I left the pillars in so you can kind of get an image of how things were set up. I ended up moving this entrance back a little bit. The code says it has to be 100 feet away. I can have one closer if I have two, but I only needed one to have people to be able to turn in. And I talked to the engineering department, and they said that it's possible for me to split the lots, each of those lots into smaller lots themselves. They have to be 150 feet wide. They have to net out at more than an acre. By netting out, they mean from the right-of-way line inward, even though we own to the center of the right-of-way along US 23. So I could split the 4 acres into 3 lots, or I could do it into the same 2 east and west division that I had along where Ryan Street was. They said with each of the splits, you do have the right to have a driveway for every one of those splits. However, the county overrules those decisions, and they would still only give me the same 2 entrances they were willing to give me as a subdivision. But I could use cross-access easements and still create the same private network of roads that I was going to create anyway. They would just have separate agreements in between landowners to take care of it. This was some other ideas I had because ultimately I needed to decide, well, what is going to work on the building. I turned these buildings sideways. They actually require a 100-foot setback, not 130, which is what's in the code. One of the advantages to pushing it back is that I'm gonna have more green space. I'm not gonna have as much of an intense usage. Most of those trees, almost all of those trees, were gonna come down. We were gonna replant some new ones, but basically we have a lot of parking in there and no room for any real green space other than the park I had at the other side. If I put a series of buildings in, maintaining, I kind of drew this out, so this was a, change directions here. So here's imagine if we split it into 3 lots, and then you take the rules that we have to be 130 feet back, we have to be 25 foot from our neighbor, we have to be 30 feet for our rear yard. This would be the build zone for each of those areas. The code has a limitation that a building can only be 3,000 square feet as a gross leasable area, which means it can be larger than 3,000 square feet if what's larger is of common use. So if you had 3 tenants that were in that building, 1,000 each, they could have a foyer, a bathroom, mechanical room. So maybe a 4,500 or a 6,000 square foot building would still serve that 3,000 leasable space. Beyond that, you would, if you still had the area, you could have a second building, but that second building on the same lot would need to be 25 feet away from the other structure. That's how I read the code. If there's any additional clarification to that, I appreciate it. I don't need it now because I think I want to look into this in the next couple of months and see what we can do with this. Each of these, there's a calculation that tells you what the space is and what's allowed. Here, although I'm allowed to build a 13,000 square foot building based on the math of what the lot size is, I only have space because of the setbacks to put an 8,000 square foot building in here. Sorry. I went back and looked at the barns, and I found that each of these buildings are over the 3,000 square feet. One's 13,000 square feet, another one's 9,600 square feet, the other one's just a tad over. Both the barns that I drew would fit inside that building. Both the barns would fit inside this building except for about 6 feet of the front porch. So the buildings I designed aren't that big. At 13,000 square feet and 9,000 square feet, those 2 barns are bigger than the buildings I originally proposed that I was going to build to begin with. Given the size of these barns, the fact that they don't meet any of their setbacks, they have no landscaping, they have no pavement. I'm not sure how I got in so much trouble last time I was here, because I felt I met everything that was required. I do understand it surprised a lot of you, but I had tried to follow the rules as best I can, as I could, mistakes notwithstanding, because we did overlook and make some errors. This is the actual math of what the gross leasable space looks like. The fact that I can have a building that's actually this big, 8,000 square feet, but I can only have this much commercial usage. The rest of it can be used for all these things I've listed here that are common. Parking garages is one of the allowable uses. I thought that was interesting when I read through the NAS codes. I was also surprised to find wedding venues is allowed as a right for these types, even though some people spoke out against those. So I'm not sure what these buildings are being used for, how they got to be so big. I don't really care. The problem is how many rules am I going to have to follow when the people around me didn't have to follow any, and why didn't they follow them? I don't need to match them, but it is curious. I went back to the original map and I started going through the code. We're supposed to have paving everywhere. The barns aren't the only ones that aren't ignoring the paving part. Gravel seems to rule the day throughout the entire area. Some people followed it, but not everybody. Some half followed it and then changed to gravel when they got to the back half of the properties. I don't foresee using the gravel. I want to use the pavement, but for me, the current math doesn't work out unless I were to try and match some of their math in terms of coverage and stuff. my building only fits in this 61-foot deep space. So I could turn my building sideways. I could put two of them together and make it the same size as this, but I'd prefer to ask if I can have a 100-foot setback, which puts me at the same distance as this building and this building here. It doesn't matter to me that they're forward of that. I don't need that space. I'm gonna have parking out in front. I was trying to stay as close to the front as possible before, but now I'd like to keep my buildings back here. Another plus for the building being back here is the Van Loons aren't looking at a road and a parking lot. There'll be trees back there and grass. They will see people on it. They will see buildings inside these dotted lines, but it won't be people constantly coming in and turning out. At this point, it doesn't bother me that some of their driveways on our property. I don't know that they need to change that because it's not important. Our entrance isn't there anymore. A lot of these houses here who are not 130 foot back, there's a section that actually talks about non-conforming lots. If you were to move these back to 130, they're at the 30-foot rear setback, so there'd be no room to build anything. So they're allowed to have this by right as an exception to the code. What they're not allowed to do according to the code is join a couple lots together and build something new, but somehow they did. I still don't understand how that happened. I don't need to mirror this, but I would like a little bit of latitude in what I want to try and do. Specifically, this is the math for the lot that I plotted out for the first one. What happens is I'm supposed to only have, at most, a 13,000 square foot building. Together with the building and pavement, and that includes sidewalks, patios, and everything else that's impervious, would be 26,000. But if you take out my two buildings, the wraparound porches that I already have around them, you only have 17,000 left. The parking that I did put in here, 41 spaces, is almost 17,000 square feet, but the sidewalks that people need to walk to the buildings is going to take up another 1950, and I'm at negative 1217, so I can't even build what I want to build if I use the math that nobody else is following. So I need to know what my exceptions can be, because I don't want to design something and then have another battle. I need some latitude that would allow me to put a coherent design together and present it back before you at a later time. This setup allows me 42 parking spaces. Notwithstanding what the comprehensive plan says, we're allowed to have lower parking rates. We still need parking for people, so lowering it doesn't really help. But what I noticed is that if we did all offices in those buildings, and this is just on the first floor, because I'm assuming apartments above, I could do offices on the second floor, but the third I would expect to be apartments. We would have 11 spaces is all that's necessary. If it was all apartments up there, there'd be another 24. That's under 42, so that works. 15 plus 24, sorry, this is retail. If it was offices, I need 15 plus 24, still under 42. That works. Restaurants, if I had two restaurants on the first floor of both buildings, they would total a 72-person occupancy using all 41 spaces. And now I have no parking for the apartments or anyone that I would put up above. So somewhere I need this calculation to be allowed to change. I don't need the 100% that the neighbors are enjoying. I don't think I need 35%. Well, I won't need 35% on my building, but I need some latitude with the impervious surfaces. I even explored and was going to ask if a permeable patio or driveway counts. That's where water's supposed to soak through it, but I don't know how long those actually last. I don't know if I want to spend the extra money and then find out it doesn't work. Again, here's the existing buildings. They're at 33% coverage for 5156 Cheshire. That's the smallest red barn. The middle one on the back on Ford Street is at 13,440. That's a 38% coverage. This is just of the building. And then the other one is at 34, 35%. So that's the end of my presentation. I guess what I'm telling you is I don't want a decision on my PUD because I think I can achieve my goals and hopefully some of yours by going back and simply applying the NCD that's there. Just what I've gone over is we need to talk about the GLA calcs. I need the parking calcs, and I need a 100-foot setback. That would be the only variance that I really need to have. I mean, I'm assuming that calculations are variances too, but it seems like everybody else is enjoying those calculations. I can save the 7 acres to develop later on. Because we don't know how these buildings are going to be received, I can just build one and then build the second one on the same lot. The county said I don't even need to split it initially. If I build it in that one corner, I can split it later. The advantage to splitting is that I could sell each one of those sections off individually instead of somebody having to buy all the buildings on the entire, the 4 acres. So I apologize that a lot of your questions are going to be for something I have no intentions of doing anymore. But I'd still be glad to answer them as best I can. I would hope that this alternative appeases a lot of you because nothing isn't happening. We're closing on the land on Tuesday. I'll then be your new neighbor officially. But we don't have to do anything right away. My initial motivation was to get everything done, get stuff before our lender, but we ran out of time for that, so we went an alternate route. We're simply going to buy the land, hold on to it, take 2 or 3 months to think about what we want to do, what fits best. It may work out that we will be back asking for a PUD in that section because what we want to do doesn't work. But as I've worked through some of these designs, we've done a couple of barn-dominiums for people. I think we have basic space. The 3rd floor will have 2 800+ square foot apartments minimally if I keep the same buildings I've already designed. The 2nd floor could have offices that are both over that 800 square feet, or it could be a combined 1,600 if somebody wanted the whole floor. We could have 2 offices or 2 retails on the 1st floor. If it became a restaurant, I think they would need the entire 1st floor. But basically, the building would be a shell that we could then cut and piece things together. The 2nd floor above the front half of the building could be removed if somebody wanted a loft, if they wanted a larger coffee shop. Still wouldn't approach that 3,000 square feet for an individual use by using the first 2 floors. Or I'm sorry, actually, yes, that's true, because the middle section of the building is the common staircase, elevator, if we want to put it in, the mechanical room, and the bathrooms that everybody would be using. So that doesn't count towards the GLA calculations. So if anyone has any questions, I'd be glad to take them at this time.
So my understanding, you're withdrawing your application, is that?
Yeah, I don't think tabling it is really going to, I don't think we're going to follow through with it. Building 10,000 square feet all at once and then hoping somebody decides to change some of those other buildings. I mean, 3 of them are going to be there for at least 20 years, right? They're barns. I think building something that looks more like a barn, but it's prettier, would actually work out better. Again, like I said, it would complement the Shire. And with what they're doing with these barn-dominiums, even the residence side of that would look really, I think would look really nice. Again, if you don't like a farmhouse, then it's probably not going to appeal to you, but it seems to be very popular these days.
So I think we have to have you formally request to withdraw your application. Am I procedurally correct on that? Okay.
I would formally request
Okay.
to withdraw our application.
Okay. Thank you for clarifying.
And I would guess I would also like to ask, you know, my first conceptual meeting didn't matter. I mean, one, nothing you say counts, right? But when I got to the next meeting, nothing that was said seemed to count. The rules had changed. How do I get guidance on what I'm allowed to design and what latitudes I'm allowed to take and be assured, 70, 80% that there's probably going to be a yes vote for those types of things. I mean, I sit down in the city of Westerville, Delaware, even Dublin, and you try and build a consensus so that then when you go to those meetings, you know which direction everyone's leaning. You don't always get, the yes vote, but usually you get a list that if you cure or adjust, you can go back and you'll get what you're trying to accomplish. Here, I look at the neighbors, I don't even know how to come up with a general rule of what I think I would be allowed to do. So I don't know if I would talk to you or if there's, or should I have that, would you recommend that conceptual meeting?
Yes. Yeah, Jake really is our point person for those kind of things.
Okay.
And as a commission, I mean, you've seen our resolution. Like you said, you had some errors. We feel like there are some areas of our resolution that don't completely match up with other things. You've noticed this. But we try to ask, bring it in without divergences. Be real clear about what you're going to do. Make sure we can understand it and not be confused by it.
I think that's what led me back to that NCD. It already is an NCD, and if I stay with that, I'm not really asking.
Right.
Or I'm down to 3 things is all I'm really,
Right.
that I can see that I would be asking
Sure.
to be massaged.
Right.
And I can work with you on the contextual kind of matters within the resolution. As it comes to opinion-based or anything like that, obviously I have to stray away from any of that kind of stuff. But as it pertains to the code, you're more than welcome to set up any times or multiple times with me to meet over stuff. And then
Sure.
if it comes back to the point where you want to bring it back, you can kind of do the informal process like how you did for this same project. You can come back in front of the board as an informal meeting to be able to meet with them, to see after the fact of meeting with me, to kind of see what that plan looks like for them.
Okay.
All right.
All right.
Also, I don't know if looking at the neighbors is a good route to take because there might be some, maybe non-conforming uses going on that aren't exactly in the way that.
At least their buildings are new. They haven't had time
Right,
to
but then-
non-conform.
There are some
They're just not.
some things in litigation that are not approved by the board that, would not be something that we would necessarily approve.
Well, if I heard that, I would understand why I'm not being allowed to do something. Even if you
Just
lost,
look at the neighbors
I would
and think that
understand
that was
that,
something that we would be okay with.
sure. So are you saying that 50% rule is hard and fast, and because my other idea to get around that is to put the parking on the buildings. Yeah, I know it's doable. We've done it.
I mean, I think that's, once again, a conversation to have with Jake is to sort of spitball some of those ideas. But, our resolution is kind of your guiding document, so.
And I would say, type of question, I'll be honest, during your entire presentation, I just kind of looked and I'm like, that's not what I reviewed, that's not the code I reviewed. I'm like, I have no idea what he's talking about here. Did I miss something? So so that kind of question, we weren't even
We
thinking
weren't
that
prepared for
path.
that question.
So,
Sure.
if you ask us something about it, I'd be like, I didn't go into depth on that part of the code for this meeting, so I wouldn't even begin to give you an opinion on it.
Sure.
So that would be something later that if we had this to review, maybe on an informal basis, we can kind of review it. But right now, I don't think we could necessarily give you good guidance as to what could or couldn't be outside.
Yeah, I'm
of
just
the
trying to
resolution.
avoid modeling 40 buildings like I did for this
Sure.
and try to pick a couple. Again, if you told me that you might as well plan on turning them sideways, John, because we're never going to give you the 100 feet, then I would plan for that. But I don't want to continue going down a path that's not going to lead me to something that everybody, that all of us want. I mean, I know I can, from what Brian said, I can push to get what I did to the extent that it follows everything that's in the comprehensive plan and in the zoning resolution. But that's not my intent. I'm hoping that I can offer up something that is more palatable to the community. It's going to take us probably 7-8 years. I mean, unless everything just takes off, but to start building just through that 4 acres. And like I said, the only thing I need to do is bring water down, sewers across the road, so we will always have access to that. As I get closer to the 7 acres, I need to deal with the floodplain issue, and I need to take care of my runoff issue just for what I am building, but we can build a series of detention tanks, underground detention tanks, that then time the feed to the stream so that we're not impacting that anymore. I may find out that I need to do some advanced work if the spring rains are as torrential through there as someone once mentioned last time I was here, then I'm gonna have to take some action for that. I know part of the action we were trying to take with the entire development was there's some water coming off the back of the 7 acres that's running into the adjacent subdivision. I don't know if I can still try and address some of that, if it's just a channel that I need to do, that I could try to address that now. But again, my goal is to try to fit in with the neighbors, not, you can choose not to visit our buildings, but I don't want it to be something that we're, mortal enemies over. If I can make a few adjustments and I'm still happy, and you're a little closer to happy. That's my goal.
Can I ask a question? So I just want to make sure. So in this situation, you're showing the buildings turned sideways.
Yes, I can scroll back to a couple other.
My personal perspective is I don't love that. I don't think it looks as nice. But I think, again, this is from my perspective, whatever is going to allow you to achieve closest to the comprehensive land use plan is what I would march forward with. And of course, we can have,
So you're saying you don't like these buildings facing, with the glass facing towards Cheshire Road?
Actually, that looks better than I thought it was going to. So that's fine. That's fine.
The idea would
Yeah.
be to create a
I was
courtyard
thinking
between the two
yeah.
that they can share.
So what do you,
Yeah.
I know, sorry, I was.
I think we were all trying to
Yeah.
reconcile your
I
presentation.
just kept trying to, I'm like, I
Sure.
don't remember
No,
what
no.
page this is. So that's what you're thinking is kind of courtyards in between.
Yes, so this is what is
buildings?
required now.
Yes,
If I don't get to 100 foot, which is where
Yeah.
that line is right there. But at 100 foot, that gives me 90. I can now turn those buildings so that the glass all faces. Now I can still put glass. I mean, if I ran it the other way, I could put a couple bumps and put some
Sure.
glass that faces that
Yeah.
way. But I only have 60 feet to work with instead of 90 for each of those buildings, and then have some space in between those buildings that people could have. I mean, in like the next lot over, I actually could fit a bocce court between the two, if that's what I wanted, and it was considered a non-impervious surface, then I could fit that in there.
okay,
And again, that would be driven if, say, a restaurant wanted to be there and they wanted a bocce court,
Yeah.
then I could see doing something like
to
that.
me, honestly, I mean, that looks less commercial than, and we know that they're going to be commercial, but it looks less commercial-ish than, row of buildings.
Yeah, these were the two
Mhm.
styles. I was gonna try and stay away from red and tan
Thank you.
for my color scheme. These are shown as white and black, but I've seen some other color red. I mean, well, there is a red on a barn that I like, but I don't know that I wanna be too much like those. Not that there's anything wrong with that, but I just have a different, more of a
Yeah.
contemporary farmhouse feel.
More, natural and some of those darker colors, mixed in it can be really beautiful than the not.
Yeah, I mean, some of these stark blacks that I've seen on some of these buildings, they really do pop. And I've seen some buildings where they don't look good, at all, but that's what I need to sift through. But like with any lot and any subdivision, this is what I bought, this is where I can build, and then I need to get something that fits inside of it. I'm still trying to figure out where can I build so that I can design.
Yeah, I will say that like the materials that you provided in your update,
Are killing.
like the paints,
Yeah.
the exterior finishes, even kind of the design, I thought they were very appealing.
Mhm.
I don't think I had any issue with any of the material selections or finishes, or even really kind of the architecture, so to speak, of the elevations.
Sure.
So I thought it was all, it's very tasteful and upscale, so,
Man.
keep it up.
And you did mention, this was the thing that made my ears perk up, just from when you mentioned the apartments being on the third floor, right?
Yes.
I would definitely plan on putting elevators in there, just from a moving in, moving out, usability perspective, and also from a handicap, perspective too.
Well, we would be exempt from that handicap. I mean, I would hope to have some buildings, because you're allowed to have apartments above and beside. So later on, I plan to have some buildings that would have apartments
Okay.
beside, so you would have an accessible unit. But until I get to like the fourth building, we don't have
Sure.
a number that requires that.
Okay.
And I expected it's gonna be a younger person that's living on the third floor.
Well, my thought though was if there, even if, an office space or something is, and there's someone that's handicapped that needs a wheelchair or
Sure.
something, that they would have the ability.
Sure.
And from an overall moving supplies in and out, right? It's easier. Stairs are great, but sometimes it's harder, so.
So would you do any condos, or would this be,
Well, the NCD doesn't allow
okay,
condos. I have another series of houses that, they're about 30 by 27. Garage is on the first floor, set of stairs takes you upstairs, and you got your main living, and then your attic areas where you're sleeping is. They can be done with a flat roof, or I can still keep the gable under that 35 foot. But I didn't want to get into drawing any of that, until I knew what I was allowed to do or what I wasn't allowed to do. At the night before I realized I didn't have 90 feet, I actually had two smaller buildings, 26 by 26, that were commercial. And then I had the apartments attached, and I've just done a center road to get as little pavement as possible that you could walk down almost like it'd be like an alley in the short north area, if you think about that. And you see the carriage houses that they build down in that area. Those work per the code. I like that idea because then their backyards would be towards the Van Looms would be a series of backyards that those people could use. And then towards Cheshire, we wouldn't have to park. Towards Cheshire Road, we wouldn't have parking. We would keep as many of the trees and keep it as natural as we could. Again, I don't know where I'm allowed to put the buildings, for me to really, I guess that's what I'd probably go over with Tim and show him some samples. Pare it down and then maybe come back before the conceptual and see what you're thinking. And hopefully some of you would show up at that conceptual meeting and I can get some input from you as well and keep myself on track. The quality is not going to change. That's what I've been doing the entire time that I've been building. It's really just driven by, it's like I say, here now I only have to build one or two buildings. I don't have to put in all the infrastructure for the entire subdivision. I could leave that 7 acres for my kids to do something with later on if I don't get that far. But then I could get surprised. We build two of those buildings and next thing you know, I can't get the other ones up fast enough. Or I go back to what I showed on the last page. I can run homes all the way down to me, and I end up with just a small bit of that commercial, and I run homes, and I've got some wooded lots that I could sell. Any of those things appeal to me, but this way I haven't picked anything just yet. If I pick the PUD, I'm stuck and I can't adjust. And in our business, we have to, I think that's part of what frustrates people when they're talking to me is I'm prepared to do anything, but I can only pick one. And then everybody wants me to pick one and only do that, but their answers make me want to do, something different. So, again, building that consensus would be nice.
Well, we appreciate that and we welcome you as a neighbor and look forward to what's next. So,
Thank you.
any other comments from the board members? I think since this application is withdrawn, we can still entertain community dialogue and questions if you would like. So.
And I'd be happy to address any of your questions about the original application as well, because there's still concerns.
If you'd like.
Hi, I'm Jacob Reinhardt, resident 5256 Finch Lane, Galena, Ohio. So just a quick note with those red and tan farms, they're actually warehouses, and all three of them were not done through the zoning commission. I believe there's still an investigation ongoing with them, but had they gone through the zoning commission, they would not be there. Or they'd be like very different, but basically those developers, they bought up all those lands very quickly and built those farms without any public input. So, and then, just one other point I just wanted to make is that like with preserving the wooded areas, I just want to that the tree line, that there should still be a tree line that is parallel with the wooded area in between the arbors and the meadows in Cheshire, just so there's still that area for animals to cross in between. And then my last point is that like, if you're concerned with like space reasons for like an elevator, like there's machine roomless elevators out there that don't need like a bunch of equipment in a separate room, if that's one of the concerns you had with an elevator. But that's really my concerns now.
Thank you. Can I respond?
Certainly.
The elevator, we've done a couple in residential houses, and they're different animal, there's different cost level that comes with doing them in residential. Once you get into a commercial setting, then you have to be, you have a higher standard of care in commercial. I would liken it to the fact that a house only is required to have smoke detectors, but in a stadium, nothing's allowed to burn. And one inspector in Delaware told me, he says, if you think about the code, it's how many people are you allowed to kill? Sounds gruesome, but in a stadium, we want 0. In a house, if you decide to use one of those burners that tip over all the time, those kerosene burners, that's on you. You have a smoke detector that buys you 20 minutes. You get into a duplex, you get an hour. You get into a triplex, you got 2 hours to get out before that fire in that one building will affect you. So there's different standards as you go up. The elevator for a commercial goes from being about $50,000 to about $250,000. If we were doing 4 or 5 floors, I could probably cover that. Or I might find myself doing a 190-foot, 200-foot long building so that I can get more units, because you usually find one elevator, 2 sets of stairs at the end. And there's also travel considerations. The longer a building is, the more staircase you have to have to get to that. That's also why a lot of your apartment buildings, the 3-story apartment buildings, have that open breezeway between them, is because that stops them from having to put they're considered separate envelopes, and they don't have to put an elevator in. Everybody just negotiates those stairs. It's not that I don't like elevators. The dumb waiter is actually less expensive than putting the elevator.
Are there other public comments? Yes, sir.
Daniel Dodo, 791 Grand Drive, Illinois. I missed the last meeting, but I'm just wondering your motivation for the apartments. As a resident of the area, we used to have a housing where there's one of the big reasons why we moved up here. Not be near the apartments, like trying to be right. So I want to understand, I mean, you have a beautiful piece of land that you can develop clearly. A lot of things that will cost good revenue for you. What's the motivation with the apartments? Is it really how many are there?
Well, I'm not sure how apartments got equated to convicts or drug dealers or Section 8. The people that we rent to spend $2,000-3,000 a month, even in the homes that we spend. But not everybody needs a house. Not everybody needs a yard. I'm at that age where I'd like to have a golf course that I can watch somebody else mow. But for years, I spent $3,000 a year, still, because I haven't moved yet, I still spent $3,000 a year mulching the yard. That was fine when I had 4 kids. But now that it's just my wife and I and 1 dog, we don't need all of that. There are a lot of people here that come in and stay, they camp, want to travel around the parklands that are here. And an apartment will work out really well for them. We have a number of, I have a number of friends that run Airbnbs throughout the county and a lot in Franklin County. And the same thing, there's a lot of people that come in for, say, a horse show, or you have in-laws in, to stay for the holidays, and they don't want to be right on top of you, but they'd like to be close, maybe 5 minutes away. And those apartments would serve a purpose for that. Under my original application, we were going to put in, I think, 36 houses on the one side, and I wanted to keep 9 to 11 that would be in the commercial just for that space. 2 of those units could be the maintenance man and the leasing agent, and they would actually live there full time. That would save some money. And then they can monitor everything and make sure that they're addressing everyone's concerns. I see a need for apartments. Everything I read tells us we need more places for people to live and stay. I look at those apartments as a place for people to also play as well.
I'm sorry, sir, could I get your name and address one more time?
Daniel London, London, like you see in England, Illinois.
Thank
And BP 791, Burnett, right?
Are there other public comments?
Yes, my name's Jeff Long. The Van Room property, this is the owner of it, right next door to this situation. There's at least three areas of concern. One of them was the way things are laid out, and the early survey I seen was his lot line comes over 3 foot or 6 foot from the driveway. I hired a surveyor and they're out there now working on it, and we don't believe that's correct.
That would have been important to me because I needed every foot behind those buildings, but if I lost some footage there, it would not hurt me if it turns out. Now, first of all, if it turns out we're wrong, we're wrong. We would need to adjust. I believe that we did adjust a property in the back. One of the pins we found was in the wrong location. I did get a new Alta this week that they changed something in the back corner, but I don't think they said anything about the driveway.
This was, that's what the map shows. The original plan shows.
No, I'm not disputing that. The original plan shows that, but if that plan is wrong, I'm not gonna build something on your land intentionally. But my first plan, if I were to lose, let's say 4 feet, that impacts the building that I was gonna build. I would need to know that now, not after I started the foundation. I'm not saying I couldn't adjust, but now the way I have the buildings situated, and specifically the beginning building, because it's actually fronts on East Street, I'm allowed to be 25 feet away from that, what is actually a side property line for me. So if I lost 5 feet there, I'm planning on being 30, but if I lost 5 feet, I haven't affected what I've shown you today. So, but we would make sure we have that right. I mean, I'll ask my surveyor about that, and
We can ask
see if we
mine
can.
too.
Pardon me?
You can ask mine too, because we paid to have it surveyed.
Am I allowed to contact you now?
I'll put you in contact.
All right.
Absolutely. I didn't get a written report, but I got a verbal report for tonight, so. But I'll have a written report by Frank.
Yeah, and sometimes those errors in surveys is they pick different points to start from their surveys from, and I don't know why they do that. And I'll get a survey that says has 2 degrees something on it, but my other survey had 3 degrees. If you read in the corner, it says, well, they went to this point and rotated off of that. So there's some errors there. And I've been back and forth with the auditor because their Dallas map is off in several areas in that location. She eventually just said, look, we're doing the best we can. We're not going to get it 100% right. But if I'm not building near there, like if I knew there was a 5-foot margin of error and we still needed to sort it out, I would adjust my building to allow for that, so that in the future, if we lost that 5 feet, then it wouldn't hurt what we were trying to do. At the same time, since I'm not using that corner of the land, it's not something I'm want you to move your driveway for, because it doesn't really impact us. I want to keep the tree line there and maybe supplement, and I don't know what the landscaping might require me to do if I'm now 30 feet away, because now I'm not impacting the perimeter, which is really where that fence line requirement comes about. Sorry.
And also, so this going back to the original plan.
Sure.
Seen back in November,
Yes, sir.
was a 10-foot, I believe, setback off of her property line.
Yes, sir.
Was it 8?
It was 8 on one side and it was 10 on the other. It was 10 on the back of the property, but we were 8 because of where cars with parallel parking would be. And that's the side that had the fence running down that I didn't know about because I hadn't read the landscaping plan.
I think that would also affect the property line.
Well, if it moved, yes, that's what I'm saying. It would impact where my parking is, which impacts where my road is, which impacts where my, yeah, so it was a major change that I would need to sort that out before starting something.
Okay. And then the other thing was an issue here before, if I remember right from all the folks, was the density of the amount of traffic, the amount of bodies, and everything moving in there in your original plan. And now it sounds like you're going back that direction.
Well, the density is going to come. The odd thing about the NCD is there's no density limitation.
Well, there is public opinion on the density. I do believe.
I don't think so.
Believe it is. So it's just gonna take a little reconsider. Doesn't change.
Yeah, the current code, it's the amount of impervious surface and the amount of building can be no more than 50% of that area. So if we had a net of 3 acres on that 4 acre, so that's all the net was, then I would be able to put 1.5 acres worth of buildings, as long as it's 30 feet away, 25 feet away, 130 feet from the road. If it fits in that box, if it fits in that red box that I had up there and it's not 35 feet high, it's legal.
The, valve
Yes.
coming over on 24/17 property. Have you addressed any of that at all?
The runoff going off,
You know, your property
yeah,
and Van Linen property is right together. Goes all the way back.
we would have addressed that under the original plan because we were directing all waters on our land, including the waters from other people's lands that are coming onto our land, to an underground or an open pond detention area. And then the detention area, whether it's above ground or below, has a timing mechanism on it that releases the water into the existing stream, the existing culvert that runs under the road, at a rate that's no greater than what is being released in there now. So we would build a detention system that has a capacity in my other subdivision. We built a detention system that could hold 44,000 gallons of water, or cubic feet of water. And that represented the 100-year storm amount of water that might run through that subdivision. Now, if the 101-year storm came through, then the water would be traveling through just as it would if we never did any building whatsoever.
Does that drainage go south?
No, it actually goes north.
Mine goes south.
I think it goes south.
Mine goes south.
No, the path that it leads our property is north underneath the culvert under Cheshire Road. I'm not disputing that some of, apparently you have an existing problem with this land where water's been coming onto your property. As part of our development, we would have been mounding that and putting in storm sewers that caught all the drainage and ran it over to where our ponds were located. We won't be doing that or addressing any of those lands any more than the previous owner addressed any of those concerns until the times we get to that land. Now, I might go back there and find out it's as simple as running a trench. Luckily, I know a guy that has that equipment. And if it's something that simple, we can run something down there and try to channel it, to another way. You do that when you're doing an entire subdivision, but if I'm just building in one corner of my property and I'm actually on a second lot, not the 7 acres that you're concerned about, I'm not sure that I would. I guess my first argument is I guess I need to go talk to the guy to my east who's letting all of his water come onto our property, which is probably a lot of the water that you're getting. Although it's also what's created our floodplain section. If we didn't have his water there, we wouldn't have that floodplain, or not floodplain, but wetlands situation in the 7 acre property. But I'm really surprised that it runs straight through. Not that some of it doesn't go onto your property. And like I said, I'd be glad to take a look at it, but I can't guarantee I'll give you a solution until I get to that. An intensive solution until I get to working that ground.
Well, we'll be back when we get the other plans.
Okay.
Sir, can I get your address, please?
Thank you. Yes. 21667 Wolford Maskell Road.
What road, I'm sorry?
Wolford
Wolford.
Maskell. Marysville. 43040.
Are there other public comments? Save it for last. Go ahead.
My name's Barry Leahy, 5650 Greenfield Drive. I guess my question to him is, why Cheshire? Why do you want to develop that?
Are you from here?
No, I live right across the road.
But are you from here?
No, I'm from Marion. I've
Well,
lived down
I've
here
been-
for 20 years.
I've
I
been-
guess I can say I'm from.
Yeah, I've been living on Africa Road for over 20 years. But I was coming up here and playing when it was a river. When they built the dam, my dad was bringing us up here. We used to run around in his dune buggy on all the old roads, and go play in the ponds and swim. Got chased by the park rangers for swinging on the rope swings that they were always cutting down and people would put in. I learned to drive on 3Bs and K and Africa Road. I used to take that shot up to Kilmore. I've been here since I was 16 years old, driving these roads. My son's buried behind this building, so I'm not going anywhere. this is where, in fact, when I met my wife, 36 years ago, we've been married 33, we're not moving to the south end. We're not leaving. I was from Westerville at the time, and all I've done is move up Africa Road since that time. So this place is near and dear to me. Obviously, I don't live in your subdivisions, and you could care less how I feel about the area. But every piece of land, every project I've ever worked on, I've looked at it as value added. I want to try and leave it better than when I found it. I used to have a saying on my website that we don't own the land or anything that sits on it. We're there to build and enhance and serve iced tea. And that's still how I view this.
Something earlier in your presentation led me to believe that you're just gonna build this and sell it.
I'm probably going to keep it. I'm at that age now, it's time to retire. This is a commercial piece, which means I can get that residual rental income, which is why the apartments appeal to me. The original rules too allowed, under the PUD, allowed 25% of the units to be held back. One of the things I lost during the 2008 banking debacle was the rentals that I had. I had to sell them off one by one to keep things going since the banks weren't lending during that time. So part of the subdivision that we're doing now, I'm probably going to keep about 6 to 10 of those units as rentals. Picking the ones that I think nobody wants to buy. I'm going to buy the ones along 23 and then build a building that blocks the noise. Here I expect that I would keep the commercial, keep the rentals above that commercial, and then I would end up selling the houses in the 7-acre parcel under the original.
Do you have any tenants lined up for your?
No, we've never lined up our tenants until we're done with the building and we start advertising. And again, for this particular property, I'm more, again, under the original, maybe this will change with the next couple of buildings that we're building. But under the original guise, I would have some commercial, like a restaurant, shops and things below that someone could stay and visit, and because they didn't want to camp, but they still wanted to go boating, for instance. So that's why I had parallel parking set up so that people could pull in and park their boat. It would still fit in that area. They weren't having to fight to try and turn around. And I understand the concerns about traffic that any commercial development or even residential development will bring. But everything you read says it's coming, whether I do it or not. And you're gonna see that Africa Road increase, whether I do anything or not. The goal with zoning, the goal with coming to these meetings isn't, it shouldn't, it can be to stop it if that's what you want, but it's really to guide it and shape it and to get the best out of it that you want. You don't win every argument at home with your wife.
I do. She's right here.
So you're a newlywed.
So you talk about a 3-story building.
Yes.
Your top diagram there, that's only 2-story, is it not? Yeah, I didn't see that because I was sitting down.
I'm sorry, yeah, this is our bottom diagram. This is actually 3 stories. This looks like 2 because I took the second floor out to leave it as a loft setup, similar to these pictures. I don't know if you could see some of these pictures. Like this is a loft that overlooks this open area. So if you've seen some of the coffee shops or some of the restaurants before, they'll have an area where you can sit up above.
So it's safe to say that of the screen before that, your top picture there is not going to look anything like that.
Well, my top picture was the original building where I was trying to put it up against Cheshire Road, and I've come to feel that massing is out of place for the rest of the village. There are no other buildings like that. It could be another 30 years before someone else builds a building that close to the street. By putting it back there, I get to save 30 feet of trees between us and the van looms. I only need to remove what I need for parking. I can still leave it natural along 23, so that you only get a hint of what's back in there. Now, I do have to, it's deceptive to say that all this is gonna be grass, because probably 10 feet around, I'm gonna have to clear, or trees, excuse me, because 10 feet around everything, I'm gonna have to clear in order to build the building. And most of the drip lines of trees are about 15 feet away from the houses where you wanna stay. But that doesn't mean I can't replant grass up into those areas. I just can't plant grass in the walkway. And I might replace this with some sort of surface if we're joining a recreational facility between those two buildings, or maybe we crisscross them with some paths and a park bench. I'm not sure. This box is less than this one. It gets successively wider, but it's not really wide enough for me to try to squeeze a third building in. I checked. So I would still have two buildings there and a little bit more grass. And even the third one, it's tough to try and fit a third building in. I could turn one at an angle into an L-shaped building that still creates a courtyard either back towards the Van Loon or forward that you would see driving down 23. But I think that's going to get shaped as we go through and see what is allowed, and you would see that at another conceptual meeting. What I'm, thinking fits best, and again, I can.
On the 7 acres that you're not developing at the moment, are you strictly opposed to nothing but single-family homes?
What would be other than single-family homes?
What?
What do you want to see there?
Well, you originally talked about putting apartments or things like that.
Over there, I planned on single-family homes. We were just going to do some small ones, kind of like the greenery. They were only about 24 foot wide, as opposed to the 40 foot wide, which is the Yukon sweet spot for a master.
For first city in the last meeting.
I'm sorry, I had twin singles and triplexes shown on my drawings. Those sound like apartments to you, but they're not.
Well,
anything in
but it's a higher density, is it not? In a single family home.
If you build a 24 foot home, well, I'm sorry, I'll give you my other subdivision example. We have two 35 foot homes on a lot that's allowed to be, it's joined as one actually. You can build two 35 foot homes that are 10 feet apart from one another, or you can join them and now you've got the sweet spot, two 40 foot wide first floor master homes. Now you do take a hit in value because a single family home is worth more than a twin single and is worth more than a triplex. But, well, along 23, because of the noise, I don't think I'm gonna sell a single family home. So I'm gonna use that lot and build those triplexes. I'm probably gonna keep them, but the last couple of triplexes I sold, somebody came in and bought, and we kind of minimized those triplexes so they could be sold individually. But I had one individual come in and buy the entire building. So that same thing could be in that situation as well.
Tara, do you want to ask some questions?
Yes. Tara Shields, 5222 Finch Lane. I think kind of the biggest thing, I'm gonna go back to the informal.
Sure.
From the get-go, is it came in and it seemed like there was more of a neighborhood consideration than where we got what we were hoping for out of those big warehouses in Cheshire. We got the feeling that we were gonna get these, bakeries and restaurants and the tavern moving over, and there were 3 commercial buildings and there were 3 barns and there were, it was this kind of that Cheshire village feel walkabout. And then, yes, there still were the triplexes and duplexes and single family homes, but it didn't seem as an overabundance of them over there. And then coming into the November meeting, it was like a total flip-flop in the plan. There wasn't a set plan. And so it didn't follow what was required in the OCPUD of here's 1803, here's the development plan. And you guys reference the comprehensive land use plan a lot, but are you working with regional planning because it seemed like they had that original plan from way back from the informal, but it hadn't gone very much further with them past that, so it's like, I just feel like it just seems so wishy-washy in the sense that that's what's making people uncomfortable, is that I get your point of you're creative and you want to work with what people want, but at the same time, that kind of unknown is what makes people uncomfortable. And so it's like saying like, here, I'm gonna go out and I'm gonna buy a car and I want insurance on that car, but I'm not gonna tell the insurance company what kind of car I'm gonna buy. And I want full coverage on that car. But I'm not telling the insurance company what kind of car it is, but I expect them, I wanna pay $10 a month for full coverage, and then I go out and buy a Lamborghini, So it's like, but it's just because there's no true information. I mean, there's information, but it's not set, and I think that's the uncomfortability behind it. Does that make sense?
Yeah, but there's like 7 things I gotta try and hold on to respond.
I know. I'm trying to give the overall feeling.
So we had a concept plan, which was a dream. I didn't have a baker lined up. I don't have, I know a pizza maker, but he's perfectly happy paying nothing for his rent where he is, so he doesn't want to come up to a new building. Yes, Scott and I have talked about moving, but we don't have a number in mind. Is he really willing to do it? He hasn't picked another spot and tried to build another place.
Right.
So I don't know if that comes to fruition. What I build is opportunity. It's one thing to build a spec for somebody. They have a specific thing that they want in mind, or excuse me, a build deal. But I also build specs. That's where I build a house and I have no clue who's gonna buy it. I have no clue what they're gonna pay me for it. Now, the PUD is to take a piece of land where you can do anything and say, we're only gonna do these specific things. And just like your subdivision says, we know there's 25 places, I'm making up a number, that you can build a house, but we don't know what those houses are gonna be. They're gonna have a certain pitch, they need to have so many windows, certain type of siding, etc. They need to have a driveway, but we don't know if it's gonna be a side load or a front load. All we can do is give you the rules that you have to follow if you do that. The zoning does that too. When I came back with the plan, I'd have to look at the first plan to see, did I change something materially? I thought I stayed true, but missed a number of things that needed to be addressed in the plan. I can't remember if I showed triplexes or all single family houses. I know as a general rule, I try to stay with 1, 2, and 3.
It was 2s and 3s.
Yeah, because that's lesser intensive in the fire code. Once you get to a 4 family, there's a whole different animal. How far windows have to be from one another and stuff like that you don't have to deal with on a triplex and fire separation. But I still don't have a baker. I still don't have a pizza maker yet in line. I don't know who's going to want to come there. I don't know if a bunch of realtors are going to show up and say, hey, we'll take the whole 2nd floor. I don't know, but I can build the shell.
Right.
I can build the shell and tell you that the shell meets these certain standards. You can go down to several areas in Columbus right now, and if you walk up and peek into the glass, that building doesn't even have a floor. Because what if a dentist shows up? That's a lot of plumbing that has to be run. So they're not going to pour that floor and then tear it up. They're going to wait for someone to come in and say, I want to rent this place. And usually they're paying for the build out, or the landlord is contributing partially in exchange for like a 10-year lease. All that's worked into the numbers. I don't know those numbers yet because I don't have a building to offer anybody to give them anything concrete. I'm not even sure what I'm allowed to build just yet. So I still can't line people up for those. And I could probably line people up for houses, but I've never done that. I've seen other builders line people 6, 7 months out, some a couple of years, but I've never done that. I have one gentleman that wants to buy one of our lots on 23, and I want to get around the corner where we're starting to put pavement in before I sign a contract with him. Not because I'm not gonna change any of his numbers, but if I sign a contract with him, then he's gonna wonder what happens if you're a month late. I don't wanna get yelled at. So I'd rather not sign that contract, and I might lose him because of that, because he might find another piece of land and say, yeah, I like it, but this is a deal that's too good to be true. I've had that happen, but I don't want to get yelled at if I can avoid it. So the plans I've submitted to you gave me the latitude to put 1, 2, or 3, the old plan, gave me the latitude to put 1, 2, and 3 in any configuration when I first came through here. I got that you didn't like that. And I believe that what I submitted was I was only gonna put single family backing up to you. And I think I lowered that from 15 or 16 single family down to 12 or 13. I'm not sure. I also noted on the last page that if I got any lower, I'd be down to what 7 acres supports on an OCPUD by itself, which is 29 if you do the math. Well, then I don't, that's what led me partially down this path, is why am I dealing with the 7 acres now when my real concern, the reason I came here was to build something on that 4 acres that matched the downtown that doesn't exist.
I guess it's just like I feel like, and I just turned 40, announced my age. And I've been coming here since, I was 8 years old, and I've been boating on Allen Creek. And when my husband and I we moved here from Route 23 in Lewis Center, where everything was being built up. And we were looking for a home that was close to the lake. And we found the Hidden Gem neighborhood that we're in. And it's quiet, and nobody knows that we're back there. Every time that we tell somebody where we live, it's like, we didn't even know that was back there. And it's like, we feel like if something, that's this, like, once you started adding in all these houses and the commercial buildings, and it's adding so much to that area that it opens up a lot for, our neighborhood and the neighborhood behind. And I think that's what people are afraid of. And again, the unknowns of, you come in here with come in here with a development plan of this is what we're gonna do, and it says under OCPD, again, prior to this meeting,
Sure.
it says that it's required that you list your NAICS codes that you're going to use.
It doesn't say that.
It does.
No, it actually says that you can just spell out the building envelopes of where you plan to build those buildings. There doesn't have to be a concrete design for that. It's impossible to know who's going to rent that space.
I have to recuse myself, but I just want, it's in there. So I'm saying, like, coming from the heart of a neighbor, and we welcome, and I know that it's the dream, but I'm just trying to, from the way beginning in the informal process in April when you were here, it seems like it just has changed and changed and changed.
Well, I think what you're
It's a lot of
seeing,
big
I think what you're
change.
seeing now is instead of 6 business owners in one building on the corner, you're going to have those same 6 business owners scattered over 4 buildings, deeper into the project. You now have something that's not as dense as what I was proposing before. Hopefully the farther it's spaced out, the more people are gonna choose not to go out this street other than the first building, where it's most conducive for people to come in and out. Everyone else should choose Ryan Street to go out. And again, by the time you get to the 7 acres, Bachman would be the street that they would choose.
But even in the informal, you talked about a nursing home, potentially in the back, or senior living home.
Oh, yeah, and I currently work for people that do drug rehab centers, but I don't think you want to see that.
But it's just,
build up here as
again,
well.
I'm just trying to explain that. I think the uneasiness of everybody is just from the continual change. And, if you come in with a development plan that says, here's getting the consensus of people coming in, giving the plan and saying, this is what I've gotten the consensus, here's what it is. I guess that's what I would suggest. What, moving forward too, you know, it's here and here and here and here and here, you know?
Well, under the OCPUD, picking where you were going to build the buildings is the whole purpose of that OCPUD. Once I define that, I would be turning in an application with that building for them to review and make sure it met those standards.
I'll stop.
Can I go?
I'm done.
Yeah. I do want
Sorry,
to keep
Beth.
moving along, so.
No, you're fine. We're already done.
Sorry.
So one of the things that you had on your, sorry, Kim Trapper, 5210 Finch Lane. Piggybacking on to what Tara said, as well as what your attorney said, the attorney made a statement that the resolution rules, right? But then you added information into your text that said basically your development plan and your text would override the resolution if there was any difference. That's a huge red flag to me, that you would.
That's the definition of a PUD. You actually write the text that's tailored to your development instead of looking at the broad text before. They will look at that, and as long as you meet those things. Now, I had to get approval. I don't just get to write it and it gets accepted.
But there are specific things listed in the document that you didn't follow, or you at least left very vague. You have a tendency, as Tara said, you leave things very vague, very up in the air. Well, I might, I may, I could, propose, example. You have a lot of that. This was supposed to be a final development plan. Again, I get this is done, but like Tara said, for future, that would be very helpful if you could lock things down, go down that list for NCD now and check off and say, because I spent 30 some hours looking at these drawings the first time and probably 20 some this time. And I have pages and pages of notes where there are conflicts between your text and your drawings. There's conflicts between your drawings and text and the resolution. And when there's that conflict, that lets me know that there's a problem, and that if you could proceed with your drawings based upon, hey, it's a conflict, but mine rules, then you get to proceed because you have it in a legal document because you're sitting there saying that. So I just want to be careful for the future that you follow line by line, because I will be going line by line again, just like Tara spent as much time as I did, going down those drawings, looking at every word. I'm calling Delco Water, I'm calling the engineering department, I'm calling everybody, fire department. What's going on here? So I was very detailed in here, and I had pages of notes. I've got 16 examples I'm not going to read of.
You should email them to me.
I would be glad to email you everything. And so it's just being mindful. I know that as long as you follow this, you can put in, but if you don't follow it or you're very vague, it leaves us to wonder what's really going to be there.
Yeah, I don't think I read.
Those warehouses are there because they didn't follow the rules and nobody knew they were going to do it. And it's been a huge deal and it's in litigation. They may not be able to talk about it, but I can talk about it. It's in litigation, and it's in litigation because I brought it to their attention and I sent them 92 violations on just 4th Street in Cheshire area, the village. So all that documentation, I'll be glad to send that to you too, because I follow the rules. I'm a rule follower. As long as you follow the rules, I can't say anything. And if you keep your building like this and you keep the trees and you fit in like Shire did, we can't really say anything. As long as you follow the rules. But right now, we don't really feel you were following the rules. You were so vague. I example or propose. It's a final development plan. It needs to be final so we can sign off on it. They can sign off on it. So that's all we're asking.
I don't
If you give me your
accept
email,
promise.
I'll be glad to send you everything.
Giangelo@giangelo.com. jiangelo@jiangelo.com. There is precision that I overlooked with the landscaping when perimeter parking is involved. You had mentioned last time about trees overhanging a car. when I read it, that's not what it said. It said the car cannot overhang the plantings that are there. But that's for a car that pulls in. A car that parallel parks never hangs over. That's the reason the driveway must be 2 feet away from the property line, so that your car doesn't hang over onto your neighbor's property. That's common sense, and that's how the rules are written, that you follow that common sense. The idea that you'd be concerned about a tree hanging over your car didn't make sense to me, but I hadn't read that chapter. Once I read it, I understood. I don't have to be precise inside the building envelope, what I'm building, until it's time to build it. Now, I need to tell you on a whole that the pitch is going to be X, there's going to be a certain, I'm not using vinyl siding, for example. Those things have to be there, and that I use a palette of colors that are acceptable to you. But you don't get to learn where I'm going to run vertical versus horizontal siding until the day I submit the plan. You don't get to know how many bedrooms are in that place or how many kitchens. What you need to know is that it's under 35 feet and it's inside 30 rear setback, 25-foot side setback, 130 from the road. And if it's inside there, you may not like the building, but it's exactly where it's supposed to be. And that's the same with every subdivision throughout here. Now, I did read that certain buildings, like the post office or the pavilions, the playground equipment, and I found several examples where other developers did show the details for those specific buildings, but not their houses. The greenery is the only example I found where they showed explicit examples, really, of just the front of their house. They didn't show the floor plans like I did of what I intended to build. And those floor plans are going to change. I rarely build the same house twice, so I can tell you right now they're going to change, but they're not going to be illegal. They're not going to violate the rules that we agreed to. If someone wanted it that bad, we'd be back here asking for a variance to allow them to do something that was not permitted in our text. You can go down to the greenery and they're going to be violating the text because they wrote their own text for what they were going to do, and it was approved. So whatever they said they were going to do, they're going to allow. They're allowed to have 5-foot setbacks on alley loading garages. That violates the site rule, the site triangle rule. 10 meets it, but it's not the best, which is why I agreed to change it for some of my lots, because they didn't have another parking space and everybody should have 2. Doesn't matter that the comprehensive plan says I can get away with 2 per building. I still want to keep 4 for my residential. Multifamily is allowed to only have 3, but I still tried to keep 4 as a balance. That's why I put all that extra parking. I go into the Old Harbor, and they've got 4 parking slots for everybody in the subdivision to use if you can't fit on their driveway. I didn't do that. I put like 25 extra parking spots in there. Didn't buy me any goodwill. I found all those subdivisions have no verge between their mail kiosks and the parking so you can get to there. None of their 90-degree angle parking has any greenery except for one section of Romanelli's subdivision, but his very next side doesn't have it at all. And yet it was okay when they did it. I tried to do the same thing that somebody else is doing in this township, and I'm getting told I'm vague. How can I be vague if I'm matching what the other guys are doing? You got a phrase called "be like Mike." Everyone that's a builder tries to be like Romanelli. If Romanelli's allowed to do it, why am I not allowed to do it? Now, I'm not saying I want to get away with everything that the greenery is able to do. I still don't know how they got 4.85 dwelling units per acre in a text that says you're not allowed to have any more than 4. I'm trying to get under the 5 that I'm allowed, and I'm having problems because I'm too vague. That's not a good word. Now, if there's something in there that you can submit to me and I'm vague about, you'll get an apology out of me pretty quick. Just like you got an apology out of me about landscaping. I didn't read it.
But, yeah, no,
Well, I don't care who I'm apologizing
No,
to.
and
If I'm
I'm
making a
not
mistake, I'm
saying
going to own
you
up
guys-
to it.
And I'm not saying that you weren't following the rule, and that's what I told you previously. If you're following everything on that list, then you're fine.
The
But when
PUD
you
doesn't
are
have to
vague-
follow it. What we have to do is come to an agreement where I'm not going to follow it. And if we agree that I don't have to follow that, then that becomes the law for that PUD. Not my PUD, I'm not special. This is the PUD rules. This is how they're applied.
Okay, if we may, I really do want to move on. I think these are conversations that will be more appropriate when we get into the future.
Yeah, and I don't mind emailing back and
They're
forth.
interesting conversations. I like them, but I don't know that they forward why we're
Sure.
meeting here tonight.
Good.
So,
Sure.
so I would like to move on. I'm sorry, you did have a comment? Go ahead.
Yeah, Amy Tori at 5256 Finch Lane. And basically, like, a lot of my stuff isn't relevant now, but I do appreciate you taking our thoughts into consideration, so that's good. I do really wish to stress that I would like to see in your plan a stand of the woods remaining. Again, not just for wildlife, but also, which is very important, but also for just a buffer between the neighborhoods for the noise that restaurants and stuff can bring. Also, like, I still have a problem with there being a road off of East, which is basically a single lane road. That I think is still in the plan, because it's just a safety hazard for our neighborhood. We've already been blocked in our neighborhood before and have had to call authorities. And I just fear that happening again with these roads being so small. So that's my concern there. Cheshire is much, even though Cheshire is not huge, it's at least bigger than East that can handle traffic. And then the only other thing is just the apartments. Typically you think of apartments lowering property values and they're not, they put a burden on schools. They can bring in crime because it's not the same type of investment in the community as the people who actually live there. I know you mentioned, looking for retirement income, but you would get that from renting office space and business space as well. So those are just my thoughts.
Okay. I saw one more hand back there. Go ahead, please.
Dr. Bainey, you already have the address.
I'm in trouble.
Yeah. So, just two brief things. You had mentioned at one point you did need to think about accessibility for young people moving into this development. But young people, middle-aged people, and older adults can have disabilities. So I want to be sure accessibility is very important to all of us as a community. So are you saying that you're not going to like accessible residential dwellings, or are you just saying that you're going to build them so you don't have to have accessible residential units? I wasn't understanding that at all.
To build the residences is entirely handicap accessible. We don't normally do that. Every home is 17.5 to 22 inches above the outside grade. That's why you see some houses will add a ramp later on. I have built houses where the front walk sloped up and it was dead even, and we got a lower sill front door. But I knew that in advance. We weren't building every house so that any handicapped person could visit every house that's in that subdivision. The code doesn't require that. Commercial has got a lot of different rules that you have to abide depending on what you're doing, and I am a bit vague on what it is that I'm doing because I don't know who's coming in. Obviously, if there was a dentist that said, I want to be on the second floor, I got a feeling I'm putting that elevator in as a matter of course. For the third floor apartments, there's tons of apartments I've driven through where there is no, I would want an elevator, I agree with that, but that's not the person, out of all the units that are available, that one's gonna get stricken off that person's list if they require an elevator, and it will be advertised as such, and they will, know it ahead of time. Now, if I end up putting an elevator in, say, one of the buildings because there was a need for it, yes, I'm gonna advertise that I have an elevator for anybody that wants to rent those, too. The first floor has to be, handicap accessible, so it would be entirely that. The use of the second floor dictates, whether it has to be handicapped accessible or not. But as I build the shell, in my own house, there is a spot for an elevator that goes through 4 floors. We're now talking about building that elevator, but we built that house 20 years ago. I didn't imagine I would be in it that long. I don't see myself leaving, so that's something we're now talking about. Fortunately, I provided for it. If not, I'd have to come up with an alternative arrangement. I don't see all the houses being handicapped. Now, if I'm building a ramp specifically for the elevator, then I'm going to try to keep it low. But I still have to keep a 6 and 10 full for grade, and usually do that on a case-by-case basis.
And you didn't use this word, but the feeling was kind of like we're being snobby by saying we don't want multifamily units. And it's not that. I'm sure I'm speaking because we're a really close community. That's not it. It's just, I live in a trailer. We're not snobby. It's that we
that's not what I
want this
meant.
rural area. We want this great. We have farms here. I can go down and we see animals and we see a farmer.
I think what I said was that it somehow got equated with convicts and drug dealers, the word apartments. And I'm not saying there aren't apartments like that, because again, I do drug rehab work, rehabbing houses down in the South End. And I've quit picking up change that I see on the ground because I don't know what else they might have come in contact with. So I understand the unsavory character, but as a person who's built houses in this area for 20 years, rented several of them, several other builders I know that have rented, the quality of the renter that's paying $1,600, $1,700 a month, up to $3,000 a month in some instances. I've had 2 renters over 20 years that thoroughly trashed. I wish I hadn't rented to them, but I never saw it.
And it's not renters, like, I'm sure nobody here is anti-renter, it's that we have.
No, but the opportunity is there. I understand what you were saying. I don't think you have to be 100% articulate. I mean, the goal is to find what your intent is and then see if I can adjust to meet it. I can't agree to make every house handicapable, but certainly the first floor is going to be required. And I might end up having those elevators to the 3rd floor anyways, but until I get in there and design it, I'm not going to.
Right, and yeah, I moved on from that, but that was just, I wanted to say, although we live in this gem of an area, we do travel, right? And we see Evans Farm, we see these examples of what things can go. We don't want that, right? We don't want that high density washed out mess, so we're just.
Well, that's what I'm
trying
to get away from with the new
yeah,
buildings that I have
that's what
designed. I don't want a 1,000-foot long building because it's allowed and fits in a footprint. I want to try and break it up, leave some trees as best as I can. And then again, augment it with whatever plantings, we can do, but I need to determine where the buildings are first. And then I need to go, from there.
Yeah, I understand, I understand you're a developer, but, we're residents, so we're gonna have conflict, right? We want this rural farm area that we have, and we're trying to get it as much as that as possible.
Sure.
And I'm sure you understand that. Okay, I'm gonna, thank you. Go ahead.
Ben Hartson, 5779 Cloverdale Drive. So I have just one question, it's more for you guys, but you can comment as well. I've heard a lot of comments about how people break the rules in different communities and different areas that are building, that are being built currently. Does that mean that you guys have to accept divergences to the plan that would just I mean, this is getting better and better. I'm not saying I don't want anything.
I'm
It
trying.
seems like when you like ask for a divergence or narrowing margins, then you can fit more into a smaller space. From my perspective of looking at the plan and hearing everything. So when you reference, you know, they got away with it here, they get away with it here, it doesn't mean that you have to allow it here.
Correct, we do not.
Yeah.
Short answer, no.
Yeah, and those barn people, as I'm learning now, may have gotten away with something. I'm not saying that Romanelli or Zeno's or the Greenery got away with anything. I'm saying they came here, they met, there was an agreement that was struck, and they've accepted certain things that aren't in the original text. So they're not illegal, they're not getting away.
No, it's
All right, if I can wrap this up, I know we've got, but please, we do want to go home eventually. Go ahead.
Hi, Joy Roddy, 563 Green Drive. And I'm one of those neighbors who's gonna back up to your property. So I hear that timeline, the next project manager. So in my head, I'm like, okay, timeline. You're gonna be purchasing, you've got new financing, you're gonna be purchasing this land soon, correct? Tuesday. And, okay, where do you go from there? What's your timeline? I mean, you're a developer, you have to have a timeline when you're going to build here.
Well, we don't have a
Get the
lot of
construction, get the construction.
so we don't have a timeline. Same way the previous owner didn't have a timeline.
Okay. So what I'm hearing is I can easily have my kids' graduation party without construction behind my house.
I'm not gonna say easily, but you probably better.
Okay.
Is it this year?
Yeah, it's this year.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
You might say that or surveyor's best, but that's about it.
You know, that puts it out another 4 years. Do you see developing that?
Are you backing up to the 7 acres?
Yes, 7 acres. Do you see that developed in the next 4 years?
Probably, but if it is, you'll have seen why. So we're gonna start off with one building. It's probably gonna take us 3 months is what we're prepared to go through and try to fine tune something with what the rules are. So again, when I come back here, I'm not vague. I can help it. And I can get closer to the mark. Now, I may not know the tenants, but I'll know the shell. And we'll have the parking planned out. That will, I mean, I had the parking before, but I did not have the buildings set up. I hadn't even thought about trash at that time. Someone emailed me, I'm not sure if that was you or who had emailed me. Somebody emailed me and asked about that, and I looked into it. I found a solution that I thought was really nice because Rumpke actually provides a service for commercial where it can stay in a garage, so it's not out in a bin and property. And
like I said before, we moved in 1997. We've been here, we're 27 years old. We now have 3 kids, one's in college, one's going to be in college, one's still in middle school, he's still there. But we plan on staying. You know, we love the property we live in. We know all these years, something's going to be. We just assumed it would be something like the corners near previous decade, but they built beautiful houses in that acreage off of Cheshire. It's the Johnny Cave corners.
Yeah, I
That
mean,
was our
there's-
mental assumption of single detached homes.
Yeah,
Not
and
together,
right, in
not
an
triplexes.
R2, R3 environment, but we're in an R5 environment.
I understand,
So
but that was
it's
our
expected to
assumption
be-
because it kind of flows down the street that way. You have that, and you have some individual homes, and you have a field. That would be the next field developed. That was our mental thought, 27 years being here. So, you're right, it did change over the years, the coding. So, but we would love to have single detached homes. They'd be smaller, whatever is allowed. I don't like the idea, my mom lives in a condo where they have 1, 2, 3 beautiful houses and 2-car garages. Okay, I love where my mom lives. She was on the other side, or out in Wazella Village Road. It's a beautiful condo.
Well, I mean, I had all single family homes around that perimeter. And it doesn't sound like you guys
They
all
got
showed
my
up
mom's
to tell me,
condo
thank you.
up to starter homes, where they have like.
And ma'am, I'm sorry, can we
Go ahead.
have this conversation another time?
Yes, so, yeah.
This is not forwarding what we're here for, so, and I know you want to respond, but can we? I really do want to put an end to the conversation, if that's okay. There are a number of letters that were sent to us by residents. I am not going to read those into the record tonight since the application has been withdrawn. It will still be kept in the file, I'm assuming. So if there's any comment that isn't really a repetitive of what we've heard already, I'd be happy to hear it. But other than that, yes, sir.
Hey, if I may, my name's Fred Fiddler, Thivener. I live in Delaware City. I got people buried over there at Fairview Memorial now. They rename it Delaware or something. I can't get an answer from anybody here or downtown where the attorney's at that tells me who has the plans for all of that over there. Where are these people? I already had 2 people buried out of the 18 I got buried over there in the wrong spot. I was cutting the grass 3.5 years ago, myself and 4 or 5 other guys. Well, nobody cutting that grass because of where he's at in prison, which I'm glad to say. We have to find out. I know I don't live here, but I have to find out. I'm going to bury somebody over there recently. I want to know who do I see to make sure I'm in the right place. I had a Ron Burton. Or what is his name?
Fuller, Ron Fuller.
Okay. That I was supposed to get in contact with. That's been 1 year and 2 months.
So may I stop you? Because that's not a zoning issue, I'm afraid, but it's.
Where am I at?
No, it's an important issue. We do have a cemetery. Sexton is the correct word.
Yeah, so
And if you want to give us your contact information, please, we will try to get that taken care of. And I don't know if you're aware of all the I don't know if it's litigation, but the history of that particular cemetery and how it passed to the township.
I'm well aware. I helped put it in jail.
So some of the questions you have, we don't have the answers for either. And we have Sexton working on it, and we recognize that it's
Should I come here or just mess with downtown and
they can't help you. It's a Berlin Township.
Okay, and
property.
what building do I go to see?
This is the building.
Over on those doors over there.
I just don't
This
see
is the
it.
building.
Today.
Right,
Okay,
no
the other
business
side.
hours.
Fine, thank you.
Okay, thank you. All right, I would like to adjourn for 5 minutes, 3 minutes, 2 minutes? What do you think?
30
2 minutes,
seconds.
bathroom break.
Oh, I see, but, oh, really? See, that's after they not, after after.
So we are not done with our meeting. If you have conversations, I would ask you to hear them somewhere else.
You want us to leave then, is that what you're saying?
Stick around, stick around.
Thank you so much.
Right, so now that our application has withdrawn. Keith is able to sit again.
Okay.
So we're back to 5. So our next order of business is that we do have an organizational meeting. And meeting dates are on the agenda. They are the same as they've kind of always historically been. So it is the second and fourth Tuesday of every month. And the only exception to that is December, we only hold the meeting on the second Tuesday. So I don't believe we need a motion to accept that calendar, do you? I think we just.
Yeah, we always do it, yeah.
So, would anybody like to make a motion that we adopt this calendar for the 2024 zoning calendar?
I'll do something today. I'll make
All right.
motion to adopt the calendar. And make a motion that who's gonna be the zoning chair?
We can, should we finish the calendar first? Or we're
Okay, go ahead.
separate entities? I will second the motion that we accept that calendar for 2024.
Mr. Goshen,
Yes.
Ms. Kaplan,
Yes.
Ms. Lopes,
Yes.
Ms. Brown,
Yes.
Mr. DeGister.
Yes.
So our next motion, or next order of business is to elect chair and vice chair for the 2024 calendar year. So are there nominations?
I would nominate both yourself, Angela, to stay in their seats.
Do we accept these nominations? Did anybody second that?
I second the motion. For the nomination.
Okay, so that's for both at once. Starts new and okay, Mr. Goshen,
Yes.
Ms., who is that, Slopes?
Yes.
Ms. Slopes, Mr. DeChristopher,
Yes.
Ms. Brown,
Yes.
Ms. Kaplan.
Yes. Okay. So are there any orders of business before the zoning commission that we have not yet attended to? You know, Jake just left, Kathy's not here, Jerry.
I'll be brief, I hope. I passed out on your spots a second draft of the resolution. That is to be reviewed, and January the 23rd is the current scheduled date for the board to have a motion to amend the current resolution with that document. Anytime between now and then, if you have any comments, please email me and we can addend them, and I will keep the master of it and provide all those copies for everybody and explain any changes to the current document that you have. Tomorrow, the 13th, we're taking a copy of it to Jennifer Hoover, who's an outside attorney, who is going to review it for legalities, to see if we've covered all of our bases, if you will. So that has been, the trustees have approved that. And I already mentioned the 123 is the date. And then the only other item I put on your desk as well, agritourism. As of today, that's a rumor of something that's maybe going to be proposed. Olive Creek Reservoir on 3637, there's a white building that currently has been used for like venues of weddings and other things. And they want to change, not change it, but enhance it to be agritourism legislation. And there's a document that's included with the picture. Review it. No one has officially come in, at least Jake hasn't been able to find it in the file. So the rumor was that they came in to talk about rezoning that for that purpose. That's all I've got.
Does that include like farmer's market and things like that, or
Well,
does it say it in here?
The
Agritourism, yeah.
Yeah, there's a lot of things it talks about in here in that article. So,
Okay.
just be familiar with it in case it does come up. Nothing's on the calendar for anything about it, but we've heard rumor that next April or May, they were talking about opening some type of a area there. And that's right in front of where we just approved that other development on, North 3B to Council. So I think there's a lot of activity there.
Jared, do you know if we have anything else scheduled on January 23rd besides the resolution? The calendar just says we have a meeting.
And Kathy said there is something that came in. It's not that, the book that you have is for the 9th, I believe, of January. And then there is one they're talking about.
The Hyatt Rockford.
Rockford.
Oh, yes, yeah.
So the scheduling of that, I'm not sure.
Hopefully we all take our lovely Chrissy's holiday and review this 400-page document. Jared gave us.
Why not? I've done it since Thanksgiving. I'm just kidding.
We'll be ready.
Well, anything you guys can provide, I'll update. Yes, ma'am. I'm sorry. Oh, by the way, I sent it to everybody electronically as well, and it's the link to the regional planning. It's out there, the same document that you have in front of you. So if you're better at that, it's quick. It says 390 pages.
Do you know when we're gonna be getting feedback from that attorney? Like, is it gonna be?
I give it to him tomorrow. I don't know what the timeline was that Megan set that up, how much time it takes them. I don't know.
They don't drag their feet.
I mean, it's a lot for them to review, I would think.
Yeah.
I mean,
I'm hoping that's what they do, like, for their day jobs.
Well, it's, what
Digest
Boris says Johnson and Greg says that is the firm that's through. And Jennifer Huber is the person. That's really all I got about 3 hours ago. So.
I might send Megan an email and just ask her
Okay.
if they will set up a timeline.
Well, I've got to call into her to say, where do I
You don't
find
mind
this?
to
Where
ask,
give her
just
the
a
information.
ballpark, like, what's the expectation? That we can all still be looking for typos or
Yeah.
glaring, you know.
And Scott Sanders has already pointed out a couple changes that he'd like to make. Almost, the goal was that by that first draft that they're counting on for this rewrite, that we've covered a lot of current issues that may come up in 15 and 19 of the two main articles that were changed in that. And we've done some with landscaping.
2, 3, 4.
Yeah, I'm sorry, yeah, we no longer have the 2, 3, and 4 Rs. There are 1.25, R 1.50, and R 1.85, so you know the densities. And also we have an R4 up on 3637 now that contradicted with the old R4 that's in the resident right now. And we have to update the map to show what those densities are supposed to be in that area.
Who updates the map, RCD?
Yeah, our RPC does that as well.
RPC. All right, well, thank you. It's been heroic. I know you guys have all put in a ton of work on that. We wouldn't have gotten this far ever.
Have we advertised the?
We have to do that before the 23rd of December, because you have to give 30-day notice and Kath.
Oh, no, not for this, sorry, I was switching
Oh.
subjects. Have we advertised for the zoning alternate position?
Yeah, there are 2 candidates.
Okay, good,
And it's supposedly going to be discussed at the next trustees meeting.
which is when?
Not next,
I think it's.
they just had it last night.
Yeah,
So,
I was gonna say, yeah,
well, I think they have one
do they?
Yeah, I think they have one, and I can't see that. Well, I think they have one on the 20th.
No,
That's Christmas?
no,
I don't think they
yeah.
meet till the 8th. I'm not positive.
Yeah, this is trustee right here. Trustee meeting was last night, this is BZA. So unless they're having a special meeting, they don't have another one.
She just said at the next meeting with the trustees that we
Okay.
discussed, they had the 2 candidates, but no decision was made yet.
Okay. All right, it would just be nice to make sure that we have, since we do have
Yes,
some
ma'am.
things coming up. Okay.
I agree.
Well, if somebody came in new and saw that document, they'd quit
Oh,
right
okay.
away.
No offense, Chair.
I have to do what? Okay.
Dive deep now. All right, any other business?
Darcy, do you want to do a formal motion to accept his withdrawal of the application?
Oh, I didn't even think of that, thank you. Our procedural guru has suggested,
That's
okay. I will make a motion that we accept the request of the applicant to withdraw UZC 23-005, filed by John Angelo Builders in Galena, Ohio. I'm gonna skip the rest if that's okay. Anybody want to second that?
I'll second it.
Okay, Ms. Kaplan?
Yes.
Ms. Brown?
Yes.
Mr. Gosha?
I can't.
Mr. Dickerson?
Yes.
Oh, yeah, sorry, you're abstaining. And Ms. Lowe's?
Yes.
Thank you for bringing that up for me.
Sure.
I would have just blown it. Sorry, I missed your procedural formality there. Okay, I think that is it. Okay. Well, have a wonderful holiday, everybody. See you next year. Motion to adjourn, do I need a motion to adjourn? Motion to adjourn.
I'll need your part.
Adjourn.
I'll build
Thank
it for you.
Tonight is the first night, and you're
I'm a good neighbor, I love Cheshire. You didn't realize half the block, the rest of them, those are ours.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry, what?
Oh, really? I don't. It's just like, I was like, wow, I don't smell it.
Yeah, you.